Hello, everybody. My name is Stuart Crawford, and welcome to another edition of my regular podcast. Today's podcast is going to be slightly different from other versions in that you're not just going to hear me on it. I'm very delighted to introduce as my guest George Allison, a fellow Glaswegian, and the founder and main editor and contributor to the hugely well-respected UK Defence Journal. But I might just start off, if I may, George, by asking you just to give a little bit of background about yourself and then go on to how and why you founded the UK Defence Journal.
I developed an interest in all things military when I was a kid, I suppose, as a lot of people do. My dad would take me down to the shipyards in Glasgow to look at various, Navy ships being built. We'd go to air shows at Lookers, just, that kind of thing. But I put that to one side and I went to university. I studied cybersecurity. I started work in the NHS. But, it was only really until, 2014. That's when I decided to start the UK Defence Journal. So 2014, we started off, I think it was maybe 50 or so likes on Facebook, a couple of followers on Twitter. And now we are sitting at about 160 followers, 160,000 followers on Facebook, 110 or so on Twitter, plus other platforms. So what started off as a little bit of an interest, a little bit of a pastime, has become my main focus. And I have a sort of special focus on shipbuilding and cybersecurity.
What is it you actually seek to do with the journal?
We set up the UK Defence Journal with one aim: to explain in plain English the happenings in defence in this country. The last year or so we've also been covering things like Ukraine, but it's something like that is incredibly complex to cover. One of our team members, who goes by an online pseudonym OSINT Technical, I think he has about 1 million followers now through his coverage of the Ukraine conflict. He has been publishing item after item after item, and gosh, he is probably one of the most respected OSINT, one of the most well-respected OSINT accounts online, and I've been very proud of the fact that we've been able to give him a platform to do that and to grow.
The acronym OSINT, can you just expand that for us?
I can. It's Open Source Intelligence. It's typically using a range of publicly available online tools to collate and examine information and disseminate, the information and the content generated from that. Our audience is incredibly wide-ranging, all ages, and surprisingly to me, it's a pretty even split between men and women. We aim our content at the casual reader, but our content, I know firsthand, is read by everyone from the casual reader all the way up to relatively senior people in defence and in government. So we aim for a sort of middle ground, and I think we are successfully, reaching who we want to reach.
George, we mentioned echo chambers as we were discussing various aspects here. And what I was interested to know is whether you think these echo chambers are politically motivated or whether they are motivated by the idea of disruption and subversion, if you like.
Well, I think both sides of the coin apply here. We've had evidence of folk commenting on party political, topics, particularly in support of the SNP, but those people, on later investigation, are based in Russia. For example, there was quite a concerning incident we had not too long ago. As is the case, I often post about shipbuilding in Scotland. One of the comments repeating an SNP line was left by someone with an IP address in Russia. On closer examination, when they were typing in almost perfect English, a lot of the characters they would use wouldn't be typically found on an English language keyboard, which was quite a bit of a giveaway. I often find, though, in terms specifically of echo chambers, that 9 out of 10 times it's party political. People do not want to hear something that they believe might contradict something they have invested so much time and energy in supporting.
I know that you've got a particular expertise, you personally, in naval shipbuilding in Scotland. And you contribute to the Defence Select Committee, for example, when it calls for evidence in many ways, you have the template for naval shipbuilding in Scotland, because I've seen it so many times on Twitter. But one of the things that is of great interest to me is I wouldn't say torrent of abuse, but the amount of trolling you get about naval shipbuilding issues, and two issues in particular, two myths, if you like, that have come up time and time again. The first is that we have built in Scotland at Rosyth 2 aircraft carriers, but they have no aircraft. Despite evidence, I mean, manifest evidence to the contrary, that one still comes up time and time again. And the second one, of course, is that the Clyde has been betrayed over the Royal Navy frigate orders. I'm very conscious that a lot of those particular themes come from those who are visibly or easily identifiable as being of the Scottish nationalist persuasion, maybe at this on the sort of wider ends of the spectrum, both right and left. But what's this all about, the aircraft carriers and no aircraft? Where's that coming from?
Well, just to clear up the first point you mentioned, I consider myself someone with an interest. You know, it's all the information for the public, publicly accessible information, my apologies, is available for anyone who wants it, which is why these comments about aircraft carriers with no aircraft, with you know, Scotland being betrayed over frigates, it's what makes it so confusing to me, because if people were to sit down and, you know, spend 5 minutes of their own time researching, they'd know that what they are tweeting or posting is nonsense, frankly. But I think when it comes to the aircraft carriers with no aircraft, I think there are a lot of reasons for that perception in public. First of all, of course, being as we've all seen, the tabloid headlines on the matter. Inaccurate tabloid headlines. HMS Queen Elizabeth deploys with no aircraft is always one of my favourites. What they mean by that is she sailed out of Portsmouth without any jets on the deck, and of course the next day jets were on the deck. But those things stick in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
It also doesn't help that the UK's purchase of F-35 the rate is glacial at best, you know. But I think Queen Elizabeth's deployment to the Far East really helped put to bed a lot of this. Although there are still some people who, even when presented with, oh gosh, hours of video, photographs, will insist that the aircraft are either CGI or that they're all American, you know, and that Britain still hasn't ordered any, or that they've been cancelled, or that the ships have been sold. We could go down the rabbit hole of branches of different myths, but the main one is that people, I believe, have been taken in by poor defence reporting elsewhere.
Is there any evidence of overseas sort of input in this? I mean, deliberate disinformation that you have come across?
I have actually come across a great deal of accounts that I'm sure you're aware, Stuart, there are many online tools to identify what they would call problematic accounts, which is typically a euphemism for perhaps a fake or a bot account. A lot of the information is spread by accounts purposely. Now, I can't speak as to the origins of these accounts. I don't know who's behind them, but they're almost certainly not who they appear to be. Accounts who I have personally corrected with large followings, I won't name them here. Accounts that would appear to be genuine still purposely spread misinformation. We still see quite often claims that the frigates have been cancelled or work has been sent elsewhere, which some of the listeners, obviously they can't see the video feed, but behind me is my favourite shot I've ever taken. HMS Glasgow after launch on the Clyde.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, and it's honestly my go-to now for responses to claims that, oh, the ships have been cancelled or the work went elsewhere. I always like to ask people, well, what country is governing? You know, it really is concerning that the spread of this information, even with the launch of HMS Glasgow, it hasn't slowed down. In fact, if anything, it's increased. And I think a lot of people, I think we're all guilty of this. Echo chambers. A lot of people enter their own online echo chamber, so they'll block information that's contrary to what they believe or what they want to believe. Whenever I correct someone who may have just made an honest mistake over the frigates, the response is usually one of two things: either abuse or just simply blocking me, moving on and repeating the myth somewhere else. It's very, very rare that someone will acknowledge the fact that they have made a mistake. We all make mistakes, you know. I do it, oh gosh, quite a lot. But it takes a certain mindset to make something up over something as daft as a frigate. You know, something that's not really going to end the world if you happen to have made a mistake on this. But people still like to, I guess, spread misinformation. I genuinely do believe that some people just cannot accept being wrong, and it can be that simple.
I think you're dead right, actually. I think that that people like to be right in their opinions, even when contrary information is presented to them. It's sort of classic cognitive dissonance, if you like.
Yeah.
Don't give me that information because I don't want it because it disagrees with my view of the world. Information comes in various categories. There's information, which is not intelligence, but it's open source material that one can refer to. There's misinformation, which is information that is put out and is mistaken or wrong. And then there's disinformation, which is the deliberate manipulation of false narratives to confuse and obfuscate various other things. So that's basically disinformation for you. Where do you see the UK Defence Journal going next? Is it going anywhere? Is it just going to get bigger and bigger? Are you going to have to hire staff? I mean, where now?
So, in short, to answer your question, Stuart, where is the UK Defence Journal going? I don't know. It's going to continue. It's going to, I hope, keep growing. But with regards to the future, I'm going to take this a week, a day at a time. In short, let's see what happens.
If in the future UK Defence Journal seeks to grow in some way or many ways, what is it that you think you need most? Do you need money? Do you need advertisers? Do you need subscribers? How do you think it might grow?
I think the key to us growing is simply more decent content. We need more people who know what they're talking about. And I believe that if we manage to put out more content from people who are, you know, perhaps not experts, but passionate about a particular field, we'll attract more subscribers, and potentially in the future, if we go the whole hog on this, I would like to perhaps produce something like a subscription-based newsletter with very, high-end sort of news and analysis going directly to people who are paid before going to everyone else, as a means to keep the lights on here.
I have to say that looking at your operation, if I may call it that, you and your colleagues' operation from where I sit on the other side of the wonderful country that is Scotland, I think it's a fantastic achievement, and I can think of many other commercial media outlets which might be eyeing your operation up, if only for the spread of your message. But let's hope that UK Defence Journal continues to go from strength to strength and still has the space from the occasional article from myself, restricting myself to areas of my expertise, which is basically in armoured warfare. But it's been an absolute delight to speak to you. I wish you all the very best, you and your colleagues, for the future, and look forward to continuing to read the Defence Journal and all your other ventures in the months and years ahead. Thanks for joining me, George.
Thank you for having me, Stuart. It's a pleasure, and if you want me back anytime, I'm here.